Today we're joining Enrichmond's TreeLab Manager, Aaron McFarland, for a walk through the woods at East End Cemetery. He identifies several unique native plant specimens, starting the walk far back into the woods.
So here, close to the border of Evergreen and East End cemeteries, we have another large, very large American beech tree. And here we can get a better look at some of the leaves on these. Not anything particular that sticks out about them other than maybe the texture, which is papery. You can kind of hear that too. But these sometimes, again, they'll hang on in the winter. And you'll often see these, this color, hanging onto these branches into the spring, which makes them easy to see. They rustle a lot in the breeze as well. But this beech grows kind of in a habitat they tend to like, at least that we've seen around in the cemeteries here. This is a unique feature in East End. There's kind of a large gully, if you want to call it that. Has kind of a seasonal stream that runs through it. And there's this large beech tree growing here. There's another smaller one. There's a few up along this entire gully as well. You'll see a lot of tulip poplars right around here and a few larger white oak trees as well. So here we have a native fern, common name Christmas fern. I honestly don't know why, but it is an evergreen. You see them often growing on banks, much like this. And the new leaves are small, they'll come out each spring. And some of them now too have their spores, which is the way ferns basically reproduce or reseed on the back. So if you ever see ferns with this brown stuff on the back of them, there's nothing wrong with them. That's a natural process. That's the way they reseed and reproduce. And so in East End Cemetery is a really unique little micro habitat or environment. You have some trees you don't see very often in the Richmond area. For example, especially this size, Pinus virginiana, Virginia pine. This is a pretty big specimen here. There's actually a couple on this little ridge. Some cones on the ground that helps us to identify it a little bit. Smaller cones, some the size of a ping pong ball or a little bit bigger, which is much different than the loblolly. And it's kind of a little hard to see, but when you look up at the tree, the needles are much shorter and smaller compared to loblollies, which we see commonly around here. So another defining feature, at least from the ground, that'll help you determine it's not a loblolly, it's something different. Small cones if you can find them. The bark actually another feature, and then the very small, short, at least from the ground here, looking needles. So here is a tree you will rarely see at all anymore, anywhere, basically in all the United States, especially the East Coast. This is in East End on that same slope as we had with the Virginia pine. American Chestnut, Castanea dentata. The reason why you won't see it, the chestnut blight came through and just wipes them out. So they'll usually get to this size, maybe a little bigger, and you can see the main trunk there. Then the blight will kill them back. They'll resprout from the base, as this one is doing. And eventually they just cycle through that a bunch of times until, unfortunately, there's not enough energy left and they die. But beautiful tree, highly praised for its lumber when it was around in abundance. And another defining feature, if you're lucky enough to find them, are the seed pods that held the nuts or the fruit inside. They're prickly, not as bad as Chinese chestnut, which is they get larger. But inside of these is held, so these might open up, the seeds, though I don't think these were fully mature yet, but this is on the ground nearby, which let me know that there was a chestnut tree nearby. So another unique feature of this same area in East End is a decent amount of mountain laurel bushes around, Calmia latifolia. We're just getting past their point of flowering. See, there's a few left here. Really beautiful white kind of cup-shaped flowers. Evergreen shrub. Easy way to tell them, besides the leaves, is their bark is often very textured. And they kind of, when they get older, they seem to kind of swirl and squiggle further up the branches you get. But there's a couple pretty large ones right in this area. Again, we're kind of close to Stony Run. It's not super wet here though. It's well-drained soils, probably a little more acidic. A lot of oaks around again, a lot of low bush blueberries. Even some native azaleas, swamp azaleas are here too. So this area is just a super unique little micro habitat for a lot of these plants. So here we have, I believe, the only one on both properties, East End and Evergreen, black gum. And this is Sylvatica. Really hard to see the top on this guy, but this is a big specimen for these, and it's easy way to identify these is this bark. You can see it's very distinct, super deep furrows, really just thick bark on this. They get beautiful fall color, and again, I think it's the only one on both properties, at least that we've seen. We got it here. It's in a spot that's kind of away from everything else. Again, a lot of these neat treasures at both the cemeteries are away from the grave sites, but that's probably because they were relatively undisturbed for many years. So, black gum tree. So, while we were walking through the woods, saw this plant, small, slightly hairy, or the term is pubescent leaves. Wasn't sure, so I used the Flora Virginia app as best I could. And from what I can tell, without seeing it in flower, this is something called Carolina elephant's foot. That's a funny name in itself, but the scientific is Elephantopus carolinianus. It gets what looks like a smallish pinkish purple flower held up on a stalk, apparently July through November. So I'm gonna try to mark this spot and come back and check it out later, maybe get a few pictures of it.